Here we go. It's time for the RotoWire Rundown. My name's Keith Stewart from Read the Line. I'm, of course, joined, as always, every week by my counterpart in crime, one Mr. Len Hochberg, senior golf writer from RotoWire. Len, how are you? Have you recovered from this epic Sunday down at Pinehurst number 2?
Actually, no, I haven't. It's, I had to get right back on the horse yesterday and write the Travelers. And not only, I'm sure some of the golfers feel it's too much too soon. I kind of felt the same way, but had no choice, had to get out there and do it. So maybe by Thursday, 2 more days, 48 hours, I'll feel different. But yeah, it's been a quick turnaround. How about yourself? I know you're traveling.
Well, you know what? I don't so much mind the travel. I don't so much mind the constant changing schedule, et cetera. It's nice to have, great golfers to cover for another week up here on a fun golf course. What I do mind is that the 95-degree temperatures followed me from North Carolina all the way up here to Connecticut. It is hot up here. I'm in a podcast booth right now that's cranking AC, so that's why I have a coat on. But like, as soon as you step outside, man, it is like, it's like a 3-alarm fire. It is warm. These guys have battled the last 2 weeks in the heat and on very difficult golf courses. The heat's still here. The golf course maybe not as difficult, which brings me back to last week. The last putt goes in. Bryson hits it. What's your first impression? What's your first takeaway? What's the first thing that jumps into your mind once the tournament is officially over?
Well, I guess I felt that we had just watched and witnessed greatness, and not necessarily individual greatness, although certainly merited for Bryson DeChambeau, but just the whole specter, the whole aura, the whole event. It's had such a big time feel. It was such a battle between these two guys. The only thing that probably could have made it better is if they were in the same pairing. So I just think we had witnessed a great sporting event, one that would be remembered and discussed for many, many years. It doesn't happen just because it's the U.S. Open. Wyndham Clark won last year, and Wyndham Clark won the U.S. Open. Good for him, but it won't be remembered like this. How about you being there?
Well, I tell you, certainly the excitement was palpable. I mean, everything that you saw on TV was times 10 being on the property all week. And it was warm. It was claustrophobic with the humidity. The crowds were fantastic. And, the best grade I have to give out overall, certainly Bryson deserves an A+ for his efforts. And, Rory an A for his. But, the winner for the week for me was this new anchor site, Pinehurst number 2. The USGA, who is notorious for screwing things up, did a fantastic job. I mean, they did the best job. And I got to give credit where credit is due. John Bodenheimer and the way that they ran this championship, they had that golf course right where they wanted it, right where it was most fair for 4 straight days. I mean, that is really, really hard to do. And they did, some people say, well, Keith, they had the benefit of the weather, but it was really, really hot and humid down there. Like, by the time you're going a full week trying to maintain the same level playing conditions, I mean, that really was an excellent job by the agronomy team, by the tournament committee, by the leadership, by the everything from the hole locations to the tee times to everything. I thought they put together a really, really nice championship. And I mean, it as witnessed by, if you had a bad hole, you were suddenly gone from the tournament. But if you were like Colin Morikawa, who shot 66 on a Saturday and low round of the day, then, you could have a great round and that could vault you up the leaderboard. The same thing with Sunday. The low round was 67 by a bunch of guys. And maybe they didn't win, but, they certainly could have pushed themselves up into the top 10. And, I really think that overall, sometimes U.S. Opens embarrass the players. I think the USGA did a tremendous job.
Yeah, I think by all accounts, you didn't hear any complaining about the USGA this week. It's like the umpire. You don't want, if you don't hear about them, they're doing a good job. And I hadn't thought of it from that way because I hadn't even thought about the USGA. But yeah, it was really, really spectacularly done. And I'm sure everybody can't wait for 5 years from now to get back. What is it? 2029 will be the next one. And so, maybe pity the 4 courses that are 25, 26, 27, 28. They have a lot to look up to now. But what about the whole thing at the end of the tournament? There's been just so much about Rory McIlroy not sticking around and about not congratulating Bryson DeChambeau. I want to get your take. My take quickly is he just experienced the most devastating, gut-wrenching moment of his career, maybe his life. Would we all react the same way we react in everyday situations, in otherwise normal situations? I had no problem with him leaving. He was devastated. He was devastated. And there was also a lot of pushback. He didn't stick around to congratulate Bryson. You're on the course all the time. I don't think the runner-up congratulates the winner after every tournament or even at every major, but some people think that was it. And Rory just seems to be more of a lightning rod, more of a punching bag, more out there. And part of that he does to himself. But I think he's held to a different standard from a lot of guys. And I think he really got a hard, bad rap after the tournament.
But I think part of the problem there, and you just touched upon it, is that Rory talks a lot, and that puts the microscope firmly affixed on him in every move that he makes. It wouldn't take long to think back, and maybe the younger fans don't remember, but Tiger didn't wait around if he lost. He wasn't looking for Y.E. Yang at Hazeltine. He wasn't looking for Rich Beam Tiger and Phil weren't there to shake each other's hands and one beat the other one. So I think that's a little bit blown out of proportion. Does Rory owe the media anything to speak with them? I don't know. I can go back and forth on that. But overall, what do we really expect? We saw what the guy went through. And it wasn't like he got beat like Bryson got beat by Xander, and it was a birdie on the last hole to beat him. We saw how it went down. We saw what the length of that putt was. And then we saw what Bryson did from the trees, from the bunker, 50-yard bunker shot in order to win the championship. Should he have waited around for Bryson? I don't think so. Did Luka Doncic go down the hallway and go shake Jason Tatum's hand last night, at the NBA Finals when they were over? I doubt it. I'm not, and if he did or he didn't, that doesn't really matter much to me. I think a lot of times, because Rory has become such a polarizing entity in golf over the last year or two, that people's expectations are a little bit out of control when it comes to him, and they don't allow him to be human. And boy, I tell you, had you gone through, or had I gone through what he went through on Sunday at the end there, that'd be a tough pill to swallow. And I think that him on the video camera in the scoring room was pretty much all I needed to see. And I didn't expect to see him here in Connecticut. And I actually didn't expect to see him for a while. That's for sure.
Well, we saw him yesterday. There's always some video of somewhere. He was out and about with his wife and his kid, his little girl, and they were out having a family day yesterday. So that he didn't look actually too happy about the whole thing, but it was nice to see him getting back to some normalcy in life. But you're right. He is held to a higher standard. And, if it was Wyndham Clark, who I was just had in my head, no one would be saying any of this. If it was somebody, Matthew Pavone, nobody's saying any of this. It's Rory. He's a bit of a punching bag. He's done it to himself a little bit. He's put himself out there 999 times out of 1,000. He will talk to the media more than anyone. Brooks Koepka didn't talk during the week. Eamon Lynch had to go flag him down on texts to get him to talk. Nobody said boo. So when you're the best player of the last quarter century, and Rory McIlroy clearly is, in my mind, I don't care that Brooks has 5 and Rory has 4, because Brooks has played well in 15 tournaments in his life, or 20 tournaments in his life. And, Rory is the gold standard of the last quarter century. You're going to be held to a higher standard. So I'm sure he knows that. And but the vitriol was pretty extreme.
Well, there's an old saying, all pressure is self-induced. That's 37 straight majors with 21 top 10s in that time. Rory's been there. What's that, 6 straight top 10s in the U.S. Open? I think only Phil rivals that record, right? So I can't even imagine the depths of where his brain went after that all went down on Sunday evening. And I don't care whether you fly private or commercial, Len. That baggage he's carrying with him to every tournament for a while until something gets turned around. And do I think he could turn around right away at Troon? I actually do believe he could. Do I think he will? No, but I think he can push it behind him and perform well at Troon. He's that generationally talented of a golfer. But boy, this is a tough cloud. He can't shake.
I think it's good that he will. I mean, not that he skipped the Travelers. I understand that. I think it's good that he'll be returning at 2 tournaments in the UK, and
Oh
he will
yeah.
be much more beloved and received and accepted there. Not that he's not, beloved here. He is by a lot of people. He is one of the more 2 or 3 most popular golfers, non-Tiger Woods division. Bryson DeChambeau certainly seems to be there too as well. But I think it'll be a bit of a soft landing in Scotland, for him, and then Royal Troon. Yeah.
All right, let's shift to the other guy for a second because this guy's personality has gone through such a paradigm shift. What's your take on Bryson DeChambeau as he walks the trophy around all of New York City, Pinehurst, and everywhere else that anybody will let him take it?
He won. He can do it. He won. He can do it. It wasn't like he was dancing in front of Rory McIlroy's house
Sure.
with the trophy. He was just celebrating, and it was a momentous moment for him. And the fans responded to him. He switched hats, and that changed like 180 degrees. So good for him. He can do it. He won. He's going to be celebrating. Where is he now? This week he's in Nashville. Him and the 11 fans there can all drink from the cup together. Not to get sidetracked, but if this doesn't spur Live On to get greater ratings, I don't know what will. But I have no problem with Bryson doing what he did. He was respectful of Rory. He was respectful of pretty much the whole process. He was respectful of Payne Stewart. I didn't know he had such a lineage with Payne Stewart that seemed to have just appeared out of nowhere. But whatever. I have no problem with him celebrating. Good for him.
Well, they did go to the same college and play golf there. So, I mean, there's at least some connection between the two. I love it. I mean, there's a couple things that always kind of bug me as a PGA professional is that when people start throwing around the phrase grow the game, and when Liv first kind of took off, all of these guys that were going over there, they kept saying the catchphrase, they were going to grow the game. They were going to grow the game. Phil or whether it was Patrick Reed or whomever it was, like that was their cop-out phrase for like why that they did it. Not that they just took the money, right? But like they were going to do something special. Greg Norman was going to grow the game. Well, with all due respect to all of those people, Bryson has done it more than any individual, I think, in 25 years since when Tiger came on the scene, to be quite honest. I mean, this guy, he's got 250,000 YouTube followers. Every video he puts out gets 1 million views. I mean, that's like 10 live tournaments coming out on the CW as far as like, but my point is that like when everyone complained that like, when Phil was like, I want to do this because of my name, image, and likeness, and I can't do all the things that I want to do to promote my brand and my golf and everything like that. None of those guys have done it. Not one. Not one has done anything except Bryson. So I give this guy all the credit in the world. He's 28 under par in the majors this year. That's first, right? The second place guy is Xander. He's 23 aggregate after 3 majors. I mean, this guy has played unbelievable golf on 3 very different golf courses. And, he went 6th, 2nd, and 1st. I give this guy credit, and he couldn't be more approachable. I mean, we went through a generation of golfers that were just like Tiger that wouldn't give us anything. And I love Tiger. But at the same time, it would have been great if he was a little bit more approachable. I think he would have been a bigger man of the people. The fact that this guy just walks out into crowds with the trophy and just has made himself just so approachable and so likable and everything after he came out as the mad scientist, I think it's fantastic. And I think he's doing wonderful things. As a PGA pro, I'm just so happy to celebrate somebody who is really embracing winning and wanting to be a leader in golf. Well said.
Well said.
All right, well, before I keep going on some other senseless diatribe, let's get into the TPC River Highlands. This is what the people are here for, Len. They want the names from you in the 6K land at the end of the show, right? I know. I'll get there, folks. I'll get there. But first, we've got to start with TPC River Highlands. We have another signature event, our 8th of the year. We had 72 golfers. Rory withdrew yesterday. We now have 71. It's a no-cut event. Par 70 golf course, 6,800 yards and change. It's about 750 yards shorter than last week and what we experienced at a par 70 golf course at Pinehurst number 2. Now, There have been some changes to the golf course. Sorry to bring up Rory again, but Rory said last year when he came here that this golf course was just quote unquote obsolete. Well, they made some changes to the golf course. And we knew in the past this was kind of a wedge fest where you needed to make a lot of birdies. Keegan Bradley, 23 under par last year. Is there anything that you feel like they've done to the golf course, Len, that makes you change how you feel or what skills that you're favoring in order to build your lineups? Or is this pretty much still the status quo because there's only so much you can do to a property that has this footprint?
Well, first of all, you said it was the 8th signature. Then are you sure? I thought it was like the 43rd or 44th or something like that. But
it might be.
Yeah.
This is 3 straight weeks on the road. I'm doing the best I can with the tools I've got. All right.
Yeah, this well, at least it's the last one. Look, they're at 6,800 yards, and they did make some changes. But I did read that they wanted to make changes, but they didn't want to lengthen the course. I don't know the property. I don't know if they can, but I think it's kind of admirable that they wanted to keep the length within a few yards in the 6,900 range. Keegan Bradley, I think that was a record score, the highest score in a lot of years, 23 under. It's been in the teens before that, so it is getting easier. They have narrowed they did some work on 6 holes. They narrowed some fairways. They shrunk some greens, which I don't think I've ever really remember hearing about in a renovation or a restoration or a change or anything, just like making the greens smaller. But there will be a lot of rough, aligning the fairway 4-inch rough. And this course, which is not like a lot of courses, there's 4-inch rough around the green, or 3 3/4 inches, according to the golf course superintendent sheet. So they do what they can to try and make it harder. And with these changes to the 2 par 5s, one is only 523. My gosh, we had a 536 par 4 last week. So I don't think the changes they make will have a whole lot of difference. Maybe the biggest, factor this week will be the heat, although it should be, going lower after Thursday, but it is in the mid 90s. It will be for Thursday, sweltering hot. These guys have got to be tired. These guys have been playing, all the same guys almost, including Webb Simpson, playing 5 of the last 7 weeks in the majors and the signatures. So do we ever see Webb Simpson the rest of the season after this? Is he done after the signature events? Anyway, over to you.
Where is he on the FedEx Cup points, Len? I need an update. There's only so many events left.
He's in the 130s. He's in the 130s. So, you got to get into the top 70 now. We were so conditioned to the top 125, but it's the playoffs. It's this top 70, right? The 120, the 125 goes on through the fall. So there's plenty of time for that. But he's got some work to do to get into the playoffs, which is the 70 after the Wyndham, which is just 7 weeks away now. 6 tournaments, 7 weeks away, 1 week off for the Olympics and all that.
Oh, yeah, sure. For me, I think it's a much ado about nothing. Last year, it was a confluence of events where it was very wet. You bring in a signature field, and these guys are going to take it super low. The level of talent that was up here was as deep as it had ever been, historically here for a tournament that's been on the tour for a very long time. And, I feel like you could do what you want. You could add more rough. You could add some humps and everything, and give these guys some uneven lies around the fairway. You can remove some fairway. You can add some infinity look to greens. You can shrink greens. But the fact of the matter is, it's not going to change what you need to do well here, which is you're going to need to put the ball in the fairway. You are going to need to be able to score with your wedges. 45% of your approach shots are coming between 125 and 175 from the hole. And then you got to be able to putt. Keegan, he gained 7 strokes on the field last year with his putter and 7 on approach. 14 strokes just from 2 skills of the big 4. That's going to get you, into a lot of good Sunday positions. Let's just put it that way, right? So that to me hasn't changed. The one thing that has changed a lot between last year and this year is that the course conditions, it's much firmer and faster. I've been out there, I've walked around, and you can tell just underfoot that it's not nearly as soft as it was last year. So hopefully there'll be some bounce to these greens as the guys are hitting approach shots in. I know they're still hitting wedges, but maybe that'll push the balls to 25, 30 feet, that have them always hitting it to 15 feet and then making the putt. But overall, it's a par 70, and I would also focus on par 4 score. You've got 10 par 4s under 450 yards. Should be these guys' wheelhouse, and that's why you see certain players that historically always play well here. And then, that gets us to the names. That's who's favorited. So we had 4 guys in the 10K range. We lost one, but we still have what might be a big 3, or maybe a big 3 from a year from now. We've got Scotty, we've got Xander, we've got Ludwig, right? Who do you like in the 10K range?
This is very, very interesting because the pricing came out before Rory McIlroy withdrew.
Okay.
And if McIlroy was not in the field, Scotty Scheffler would not be 12-5.
No way.
Scotty Scheffler would be way higher. So if you're looking to play Scotty or really Xander or maybe even Hochberg, I think you're going to get an advantage here because their prices would have been much higher. Everyone's would have, well, a few guys would have trickled up a little bit more. But Scotty Scheffler surely would have been over 13. So he is a bargain this week. And as I wrote in my article on RotoWire, he's just an automatic pick every week. He didn't play well last week. He had, only 4 birdies the entire week at Pinehurst. But, until there's some real change, he's an automatic pick every week. And I like Xander as well. Xander won here a couple of years ago. That ended a very long drought for him. And he plays well every week, everywhere. He's just Scotty Scheffler light in a lot of ways in terms of leaderboard success. Hochberg, I'm, a little concerned about Hochberg. I know he had a pretty good week at the Open last week, but I'm worried about his knee and his meniscus. And he said there might be surgery at the end of the year. He says it's not bothering him, but the last 2 tournaments, the Memorial and the Open, his best round was his first round and his worst round was his last round. I don't know if that is knee related or not. And frankly, it doesn't matter because that's not a good trait in a golfer to have your worst round on Sunday and your best on Thursday. So I'm a little wary of him. That may come back to bite me. We'll see.
All right, down to the 9K range. There's a lot of talk about Colin. There's a lot of talk about Cantlay all of a sudden. He's coming back to a place where he's very comfortable. Pete Dye golf course, positional. Are either of those 2 guys on your 9K board, or who do you have?
Colin Morikawa, even though he had a pretty good week last week, his approach play regressed. He was not good on approach, and he was helped by his short game and the other aspects of his game. So I don't know what's going on there, and he's never been great at this course before. So I'm, hesitantly sidestepping Colin Morikawa this week after really being on board with him a lot of weeks in a row, and sort of lukewarm Patrick Cantlay. Terrible season so far for Cantlay, and he had a great week last week. He just couldn't quite get there in the final round, and it's always dangerous, I think, to jump on a guy based on one good week. And so this is not a wholehearted endorsement of Cantlay, but he was 4th here last year. He had a lot of top 15s here, in 5 years before that. He famously shot 60 as an amateur here. So there is a course connection with him. I do like him, and Hideki as well. Hideki came last year for the first time to the Travelers when it became a signature event, immediately tied for 13th, played well last week. I think putting better than we really think, we remember Hideki putting, and if he can putt a little bit better, I do like him as well. Those 2 guys, Cantlay and Hideki.
Let's move down to the 8K range. It starts with Finau. It ends with Fitzpatrick. Who do you like? Either those 2 or somebody in between?
Finau and Fitzpatrick, 2 Fs, but I'm going to go with 2 Hs, and one of them is not Hochberg. It's Russell Henley, who, really was high on him last week, and he delivered big time for all his backers. And, he just continues to check off every box. He led the field in putting last week. That's always been the weakness of his game. And it's not like he got better, putting less horrible. He led the field in putting last week. So yes, I think, he's going to be a very popular guy, as is, this is falls under the category of Brian Harman. He finishes top 10 here every year. Sometimes try not to overthink everything.
All right, 7K land. I find this range, and when I know I'm going to have this conversation with you, I always look for some trigger names. And it really surprised me. And I saw one of them near the top of the 7Ks. I said, wow, this is interesting. And then I saw another name just below him. And then at the bottom of the 7K range, I saw a third name. And I was like, wow, I can't wait to talk to Len on Tuesday. Because Max Homa, Cam Young, and Will Zalatoris are down in this range. And I don't know that I've ever seen that since all three have been popular on tour. Is there any value in these guys, or do they deserve to be there? And then who are you picking?
I noticed that as well, and I knew you were going to say Cam Young and Will Zalatoris, and yes, Max Homa certainly belongs there. Well, there are two things at play here. One, they're not playing very well,
Yeah.
and two, the DraftKings has really just seemed to alter their pricing, where fewer and fewer guys are in the tens, the nines, the eights. There's just not a lot of room up there for guys. Quite frankly, I'm surprised Russell Henley was in the eights and not in the nines, moving up there based on what he's been doing lately. So I'm not really surprised in that they are there, and I'm not on any of those three.
Okay.
But I did look because I said, "Boy, these are good prices for these guys." But then I looked at them, and well, there's a reason. Will
Yeah.
Zalatoris is 7,100. He's just not playing very well. I do like Shane Lowry, who's been playing better of late. I think he can, work his way around this golf course. He's very accurate off the tee. You talked about that, about needing to put the ball in the fairway. Denny McCarthy, he had bad years here for years, but he finished in the top 10 last year here. There's no better putter. Well, actually one. He's second on tour in putting, and we need to putt this week. And, I think the shorter course will help him. And Akshay Bhatia, he doesn't do it every week, but the numbers suggest he can. He's 22. I think there's going to be a lot of ups and downs and good weeks and bad weeks as he learns to really, the pace of living on the road, of being on the tour. I think that's part of a skill set you have to learn as a golfer. And there's a lot of inconsistency when you're younger, and we're seeing that with him. But I think his actual golf skill, I think he is really one of the better players in the world right now, and he just pops in my model every week. And so I do have him, and he's in the low sevens, down there with those other guys.
I mean, Akshay, I think, is a great pick here. I mean, this is the type of place where he can just put it in play and then use his iron game to create birdie op after birdie op, and then just convert on those chances. The greens are small. He'll hit it to the right ledge or plateau or whatever, and then he's going to end up with a zillion 10 to 15 footers. And I like the Akshay pull right there for sure. In the second.
I got to, before we move, I want to ask you about Akshay because he's 22. We've played 5 major signatures in the last 7 weeks. This has been as big a stretch of golf for these guys as we've ever seen, and now going to the extreme heat. How much is fatigue is in what you're looking at in determining who you are playing? And would a 22-year-old be able to survive this stretch better than 28, 29, 32, 33?
Well, essentially, based upon the 2 golf courses I just visited, they played a U.S. Open 2 weeks in a row. I mean, Muirfield Village was very, very difficult. And then they turn around, and then it got even hotter, and they played a golf course that was even more difficult. And Akshay has back-to-back, top 20s or top 25s? So he's getting better as this stretch goes on because he's playing a little bit more golf. I love Akshay this week, and I also love the kid. I love Hochberg this week as well, and just for that reason. And I'm not super worried about the knee, but the fact that these guys are 22, 23 years old, that it's not even so much that it's a physical grind, which it is, but it's a mental grind. And there's a lot of guys that have some serious baggage in the elite status right now, right? Obviously, Rory just picked some more up, but Scotty didn't have a great week. Colin's trying to come back. Victor's trying to come back. I mean, there's any name at the top other than Xander. Cantley, he was completely gone for the weekend in a signature event that only cuts like 3 guys in Muirfield Village in a place where he'd won twice. Then he goes to a U.S. Open, to a major where he really did kind of contend. And guess what? Now he's going to a place he's really comfortable. There's so many questions with all of these guys. And I think a lot of that wears on them mentally. And then in the heat, in the humidity, and in the pressure of all these moments playing against the best players in the world week after week after week. I mean, they can't wait for the Rocket Mortgage. I mean, you and I are dreading it, but they can't wait for it, right? They need a break. So I love these kids because of their fresh attitude. They're like, I didn't make some putts this week. I'll go out next week and I'll do it again. I remember Ludwig when I watched him at RSM Classic, and he won there, right? He goes out on Saturday, shoots 61. It was driver, wedge, putter, which, by the way, TPC River Highlands, driver, wedge, putter, right? And he shot 61 on Saturday. I said, man, this guy's unbelievable. I said, I'm curious to see what he'll back it up. Can he break 70 on Sunday? He shot 61 again. Smiling the whole time, couldn't care less. And that's just the idea of like, you just don't have any bad history in your head. This kid's just cruising along. This is the first place he played as the number one player who gets their tour card. Like Michael Thorbjornsen's here, right? He is the Ludwig of this year. So like, this is where he started. He started to come back to golf course. He finished 24th here last year. It was his first ever tour event, right? This kid's got nothing but good memories. It's like, let's just roll, So I love these, to answer your question, I love these young guys. The fact that it's hot and it's oppressive out here, I think that just adds to it all. Anyone that's 30, let alone our age, would say they would rather be 22 and go after it again. So in my mind, I like the young guys this week, especially on the grind that we've been on.
Well, well said. And I think that, I just wanted to, I don't know if I wanted to reinforce what my thoughts were, but I wanted to hear yours because I think fatigue is going to be an issue here. I've never seen a stretch like this in golf and with the heat. And I think some of these guys, even the $4 million winner share, it's getting a little bit boring for them. Oh, yeah, just another $4 million. They probably can't wait to go home.
I think they all are looking forward to a break. 5 big events in 7 weeks is a lot. When you consider everything that surrounded Valhalla and everything else, how hard these golf courses have been, for sure. But let's get back to the DFS for a second, right? So we have to finish the 6K guys. Matthew Pavone finished 5th. Guy's a wonderful ball striker. I remember standing on the range at API and watching him and being like, I had never really ever heard of this guy before he won Farmers. So a month later, I see him at API, and I'm like, oh, watch this guy hit some golf balls, because I like to do that. I like to go to the practice range and watch these guys and see what they do. That guy was impressive. So it doesn't surprise me that when ball striking was put at a premium, that this guy rose to the top. But, are you taking him in the 6K land? Because it seems to me like, man, he was just 5th at the U.S. Open. He can't even get in the 7K land. Like, is he a really great value in 6K, or are there other guys, maybe some horses for courses up here at TPC River Highlands, that you're featuring down at the bottom of the board?
Yeah, you could make an argument that he is an incredible value. And, he followed up his win at the Farmers. So many times we see guys like this and they win and, they have the week of their lives and they win a tournament. Then that's sort of then they go back to where they came from. But he hung around for a while. And then it looked like the clock finally struck 12 for him. He had some rough patches there in the middle of the season. And he's now back to playing better. And he looked very impressive. He didn't quite get it done at the Open. He didn't get it done at the Open, but he didn't shoot 82 either on Sunday and go away. So he, acquitted himself nicely. I don't have him this week. There aren't a lot of guys in the 6,000s I like. Maybe that's an oversight on Pavone, but I wonder how quickly he'll be able to get back at it this week. But I do like Thorbjornsen, the young kid from Stanford that you mentioned, Michael Thorbjornsen, and just got his card through PGA Tour University. He played at Stanford. He won the PGA Tour University, and here he is, and he's played in this tournament. New Englander. This is his 3rd start, and famously 2 years ago he finished 4th here, missed the cut last year, but I think he'll have fresh legs. Fresher than Akshay, fresher than Ludwig. He'll be raring to go. And 2 other guys I like, and just got to give guys, in the 6,000s. Andrew Putnam has played some tournaments well here in the past. He can putt pretty well. Like him, a shorter course favors him. And the guy I make fun of all the time, Webb Simpson, way down at 6,200. I think he's playing for a lot more than a lot of these guys. And like I said, at the top, he's like 130 something in the stand. He's got some time to make up, but he'd like to get into the playoffs. And he's done pretty well in these signature events. He hasn't won. He hasn't finished top 25, but he's been in the 30s, the 40s. And I don't know, if you pick a $6,200 guy to move up, halfway up the field, not too bad.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Real quickly, I'll get to the names that are my leans for this week for the betting side of the outright market. And I alluded to this guy earlier, but Ludwig Hochberg is my guy at the top of the board of the favorites that I like the most. I mean, he started the week at plus 1,600. Sure, Rory drops, his number drops, but I thought his number was going to drop anyway. This is a perfect course fit for him. He can use the driver and split these fairways. Doesn't matter how tight they are. He's an excellent, underrated wedge player. And the guy's obviously a good putter. His weakness was the short game. And around this place, if you're chipping to try to save par, then you're just not going to get to 20 under. So if we're worried about short game, then this is the wrong golf course. And obviously he got, it kind of showed up at the wrong time on Saturday on number 13. But hey, what are you going to do? I mean, the kid was there. He was leading the U.S. Open in his first ever trip there. I mean, Francis Ouimet was the last one to do that. It gives you an idea of how historic this kid's run is. So I'm gonna keep running with him. I mean, he's had 5 top 25s in the 7 previous signature events. So he's been showing up on the big stage. Second at the Masters. Of course, he was good at the Open. So this past week, so I like him. And then down in the middle of the board, I'm going to go with one of your guys that you were talking about in the 8K range. And that's Russell Henley. He started the week at plus 4,000. He's already dropped down to plus 3,300. Russell's been here 6 times. He's got 4 top 20s. And what's always held him back has been the putter a little bit. And you mentioned it already. Forget the fact that he had the low round on Sunday, 67, with a couple other guys, Finau and Burns. But Russell was number 1 in putting at Pinehurst number 2. Now, he's always been known as a ball striker. And when the putter goes nuclear, which has happened a couple times for him, he tends to win or do very, very well. But overall, this is just a perfect course fit for him. And the way that he's been striking the ball this year has been his best career year by far. And this guy has a couple wins on tour. So, I mean, all of it seems to be coming together at a place that he's very comfortable. Obviously, him finishing top 10 at the U.S. Open is going to give him a ton of confidence. I don't see that being a big drain on him. He was never going to win the thing. But at the same time, he kept playing well. So I think he has a lot of self-confidence coming into this week and that he can compete against the best guys in the world. And guess what? Who's here? The best guys in the world. And I think that means a lot for a middle tier guy, kind of like what Brian Harman went through winning the Open Championship. And then he comes back to the Players and he finishes runner up. I mean, Harman was a world-class talent as a junior, but he never really proved it as a tour pro. And then all of a sudden he wins himself a major. And now we're talking about Brian Harman all the time. And I feel the same way about Russell Henley. So I'm going to go with Hochberg and I'm going to go with Henley as my early leans this week as far as the betting market goes when it comes down to the Travelers Championship. Now, we've been running on for a while, but there was a lot to unpack at the U.S. Open. Next year we have Oakmont, but we're coming into Troon. Do you think that Rory can pack up his bags and he can contend again? Just give me a yes or no. Can Rory contend again at Troon, or do you think that maybe he's going to need a little more time off? What can we look forward to?
It's a long time. It's in some ways it's a long time. What's it, 4 or 5 weeks? In some ways it's a very short time because he'll remember this for the rest of his life, I imagine. Yeah, I think he can get another top 10 out of that. And I think he will really be buoyed by the crowds in Scotland at the Scottish Open. I think that will just warm his heart and just invigorate him. And I know I'm sounding sappy and all that, but I think that will, we can all use some applause every once in a while. And, and I applaud you.
At the Scottish Open there, he's going to be the defending champion. So he's going to walk in and, the media center, hopefully they'll ask him more about defending than they will asking him about the U.S. Open, although I'm sure it'll come up. Now, I know one guy who's undefeated who comes out every week on the Rundown. That's my partner in crime, Len Hochberg. Len, thanks for joining me for another Rundown. We'll be back next week for the Rocket Mortgage. Until then, everybody enjoy the last signature event of the season.